Hello, everyone. It's time for a little bit of Deal with the Meta. Got myself, Mr. Brad Chester, and I've got Mr. Sean Rice from Dice with Rice. We are about to talk about dealing with the meta. And if you haven't seen the beginning of the series, we have multiple armies we're going to be going over. We're going to focus on things that aren't at the top, and we're going to look at what is the best route to take to compete against the top tier armies. No more excuses, just answers, and we're going to guide you there. So let's talk about this, brother.
Yeah, man. So as Brad said, if you haven't seen this series, we're going to try to be doing this for every faction that we can before the meta changes, and how to adapt to the big dogs. So who are these big dogs we're talking about? We're talking about Eldar, GSE, Custodes, and Imperial Knights. And we're going to be focusing on these factions in particular, although there will be something to learn for the faction we're picking in general. You know, if you're just really like, how do I play this faction? We're going to have some of that too.
100% on that. So I've got the meta watch up here looking at it. Today we're looking at Chaos Demons, which are doing fairly decent. They're in the happy zone. We talked about who the top dogs are. The strengths, almost the strength of every single great army in the meta today is mobility. And a lot of armies actually come at you with a mobility that you don't see because they have teleports, they have redeployments, they have ways to pick things up. And then the other is consistent high damage output. I cannot stress that enough. The armies that you're going to face that are going to be at the top are going to be re-rolling crazy amounts of stuff. It feels like half the time you're getting shot and somehow you're getting more wounds than they had shots. That is basically the things that happen all the time. We are going to try to expose the weaknesses of those. Fragility, weak shooting volume of saves putting on them, things of that nature. But we're going to focus that on today on demons, how we play against those top armies with the demons, focusing on these weaknesses that they have, whichever they may be on that. And we're going to focus on how to use our units to make those weaknesses a big deal. 40k is a game, and snowballs. Once you find that mistake, once you find that weakness, you take away a couple key pieces of opponent's army, it becomes very difficult for them to continue scoring a lot of times, and you can take advantage of that whether or not they're a top tier army or not.
That's exactly right. So Brad, what are the steps we're going to take to deal with this? What is our general plan?
So we're going to go with preparation. Preparation is always the key. We have 1 through 5, but step 1 is all of it. I mean, the more comfortable you are preparing, the comfortable you are at the tournament is going to give you so much more chances to win that game, any of those games, because you're going to be ready to go. You're going to have better use of your clock. You're going to have better use of everything that you're doing, stratagems, everything else. Preparation is such the key. Knowing what your opponent's army can do is also such a big deal. So preparation, and honing that. We're going to talk about with our practice. Honing your practice to maximize your time is also just a gigantic deal. Identifying strengths and weaknesses. We talked a little bit about that before. We're going to look at the strengths of our army, the weaknesses that we can exploit from the other armies that are at the top. And with that, we're going to make a plan. I can't stress enough. Also, I'm going to put something that we didn't put in the first one. When you make your plan, you have to reevaluate your plan again. Everybody has a great plan to start. Well, hopefully you have a great plan to start. But then you get into bottom of 2, top of 3, and I see the majority of games, I would say 80% plus of games, go down into reactive 40k where you're just killing other shit. And we can't have that. We need to be scoring points, fixing that, figuring out exactly what we thought was the best plan of action, and going with that. Practice. I don't care if your practice is playing games, setting up, TTS, in the basement, just deploying your army, going over your opponent's army. Everything counts. Literally pull out the app, look at the stats of the top armies that just won certain tournaments. Look at the Eldar, look at the Knights, look at the GSC. What are they playing? What do those units do? You know what I mean? If you're on the train, if you're wherever, you're just having some time off, look at those things and look at what are their abilities, and then go, how can I take advantage of those? and then we're going to make adjustments. We're going to figure out exactly what works in our army and what doesn't work in our army.
That's exactly right. And don't forget, part of practice is, and making adjustments together, is good communication and good practice habits. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about towards the end of the video is how do you communicate with your opponent? How do you effectively communicate? And that's really the five things that top players really do. It's right here. We're kind of unpacking it in each one of these for each faction. How do top players find success? Right here.
I love everything that we missed the opportunity for everyone to give you the 5 Ds of dodgeball. But let's rock and roll. Demons, Chaos Demons, fantastic picture of like a Thirster, Skull Taker. Oh, it's good times. Let's start with preparation. Let's start with Army and Effective Combo. Sean, bring us home.
All right, so the first thing you need to know about Demons is we are a deep strike centric army. So all of our combos are going to focus around something we can reposition or drop in at just the right time. The first thing you need to know, Be'lakor combos are everywhere, all over any list you make. And if your list doesn't have Be'lakor, stop what you're doing. Go find a Be'lakor, paint it, it's in your list. That's just, I cannot stress enough, you need a Be'lakor. This is just how the army functions. So what do those look like? Well, Be'lakor has the ability to make everywhere 6 inches around him count as being in your Shadow of Chaos, which means...
Let's say, let's go over what Shadows of Chaos means, though, because that's a big deal in how to get Shadows of Chaos. Continue.
Yeah, so Shadows of Chaos is an ability that demons have that they can drop wholly within areas of control. So what does an area of control mean? Shadows of Chaos specifically says if you hold more objectives in each zone of the battlefield, so first you have your deployment zone, you have no man's land, which is no one's deployment zone, and then the opponent's deployment zone. At the beginning of each phase, if you control more objectives in that zone, it becomes Shadow of Chaos. What does that do for you? Well, the main thing for demons is you can drop out of deep strike with 6.1 inches away from your opponent. So when we talk about Be'lakor, why is he great? Be'lakor counts 6 inches around him as always being in your Shadow of Chaos, which means you can drop Be'lakor in and then drop a bunch of demons 6.1 away from your opponent, so long as they are within 6 inches of Be'lakor. What do we do with this? Who are the guys we're dropping in? You can drop in the Rendmaster.
Blood Crushers.
Blood Crushers.
Who, again, one of my favorite units because on the charge they do mortals. Which
exactly.
Again, when you're looking at devastating wounds, it's just automatic. We talked about it in some of the others. Doing damage that your opponent can't do anything about. They just chip damage all the time is a super big deal. Whose really big dog is, you know what your opponent can really not want to happen to them? Shalaxi and Be'lakor showing up somewhere.
Yeah, that is the general plan, is you want to drop some Be'lakor in and drop some massive demon or demon blob around them and try to take advantage of the threat that gives you. So what are some other specific combos? You've got a Lord of Change and the Everstave. Everstave is an enhancement that increases the strength of the Lord of Change's weapons and also the range while he's in the Shadow of Chaos. You've got Kairos and Corrupt Real Space, which is a stratagem that lets you sticky objectives. So that means when you hold your objective in the command phase, at the end of the command phase, you pop this strat and you can now control that objective even if you don't have any models on it. Why is Kairos there? Kairos says if you're targeting a Zeech unit, you can roll a die, and if you roll higher than the battle round, you refund a CP. So that's great because Corrupt Real Space is now almost free for you. All you got to do is roll a 2-up on turn 1, and suddenly you have your home objective controlled for free. Shalaxi plus Advance and Charge. You got to know that demons have a good suite of stratagems. Most importantly, Shalaxi can, depending on the matchup, start on the board or start off the board. If she starts on the board, she can Advance and Charge, which gives you a lot of potential.
Let's talk about the effective combo on that, though. Be'lakor also says that if you are now within 18, if he's within 6 inches of a unit, all of the units, including himself, cannot be targeted unless they are basically lone operative, but the Walmart version because it's 18 inches instead of 12 inches that you have to be within.
That's exactly right. And that's going to be why I said at the beginning, you need Be'lakor for this army. He is the glue that holds demons together in their current form. Getting back to some of the key stratagems, thank you for that, Brad. We have dropping within 3 inches. Demons just having the ability to drop out of Deep Strike within 3 inches will give you a lot of secondary play, and that's going to be key as we start looking at some of the lists. Finally, we have pink horrors that are going to tar pit people with a 4-up invuln and the ability to split, and we have, as Brad already mentioned, the Skullmaster and the Blood Crushers, Blood Crushers, who are going to be dealing a ton of mortal wounds, both when they charge and then when they finally start attacking with the devastating wounds ability that the Skullmaster gives those Blood Crushers.
It's so good. And for the price too. Demons have some issues with some of the price points. Blood Crushers actually might be one of the most efficient units in that index.
Yeah, and that's something we're going to definitely look at as we get into some of our own weaknesses, is how are demons priced? And what can we do about it?
So we're going to talk about building an effective list. We have to do secondaries. Gotta take some Nurglings, bro. Love them.
Got to.
Pink Horrors are great for objectives, army identity, deep strike, board control. You can take monster mash. I think there's 2 types of demon lists right now. There's effectively a full MSU style list, and then there's monster mash list. And you're going to run one or the other, to be honest with you. And one of those things that's going to depend on that is with all tournaments, 2 things. Always know how your event is ruling the interactions with your army, and that also goes hand in hand with what style of terrain are you playing on. Also, when it goes in with interactions, what are they ruling towering? What kind of terrain they have? Can you come in on turn 1 when you pop off on their turn? Can you come back on turn 1? Do you have to come back, wait until turn 2? You need to get a ruling from that before, because a lot of times you're going to have a lot of combinations are going to be based on those rulings. So you can't base a huge chunk of your army on, hey, I'm planning on picking things up, showing right back up, and the tournament says no. You know what I mean? So it's a big deal. Let's go down to identifying strengths and weaknesses. So I do think that range defense is a big deal with Be'lakor. Starting off the board, I cannot stress enough, if you don't have a decent amount of your army coming down in deep strike, you are doing demons wrong. Horror splits are crazy because you can actually take objectives that you didn't have before and really stress your opponent out. You can also, one of the things about splitting, and we'll go more into this later, you have to look at the defensive factor of splitting, because a lot of times you can actually split, bring things back, get in the way of potential charges from your opponent where they have to hit horrors now and not hitting what they want to. Mobility, excellent secondary plan. I think that demons have probably the second best mobility in the game behind Grey Knights. The deep strikes, the advances in charge, the ability to just pick things back up is a huge deal. Anytime you can move outside of normal ways, it's such a big deal because your opponent has to plan for it the entire time, which goes into that potential threat of Shadows of Chaos. Coming down and getting 6-inch charges is a gigantic deal, and the ability to redo that the entire time, which is why, even though he's a big scary guy, there's a ton of times when you are going to basically use Be'lakor as a key non-offensive piece so that you can continue to rotate people back out.
Right, and I wanted to touch on just for a second the potential threat aspect of it. When you're playing demons, your goal is to present your opponent with this wide swath of things that you can do. Now, it's not necessarily that you are going to do it. It's the fact that you can be anywhere. You can advance and charge, and that really affects how your opponent is going to try to deal with you, because they need to make decisions ahead of time that you can then capitalize on.
And it's such a big deal because a unit that's boxing out their backfield is a unit that's not taking the middle objectives. It's a unit that doesn't have range to shoot you. And it's also giving your opponent tons of questions, gives them more opportunities to get them wrong. you're looking to take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. You have to give them enough threats, enough things that they have to worry about so they can start making spacing errors. They're too far back. They boxed out the board corner, or they didn't box out the board corner. Maybe they no longer can get to that middle objective, so that the unit that they wanted to take cleanse with, put out a teleport home or area denial, can't get there anymore because they're too busy holding things back. And that's fantastic because we're not having to play against their entire army at that point in time. We're picking and choosing. We're surgically striking certain areas of the battlefield. I always want to be fighting a horribly unfair battle at all times. I want to have 2 or 3 of my units picking away at 1 or 2 of their units.
Exactly. Well, that's some of the strengths of demons. Let's talk about some of the weaknesses. Why isn't this army at the tip top?
We're going to go with the number 2, which is they're just too expensive. So a lot of their units are just not efficiently costed. And you put the medium durability for high cost, I think that it's just straight the high cost. You really have to watch out for not having enough things on the board to play the game with demons. And that is why they're not at the top, because it is difficult to make all these things work, which also means that you have to have a game plan, practice that game plan. We're going to go into this again, but it's important. This is a very powerful army, but you literally have certain things that you're heavy hitters. There's certain things that are taking the board, and you have to watch out for just being able to score the board. You have to be very careful, very focused all the time with demons. You are not going to just line up and braveheart your opponent and just run at them. That is not the way you're going to win with demons.
Exactly. And that leads into, what does our plan look like as we're playing demons? Approaching kind of the top, how do we play against them? I definitely think the correct thing to do with demons is to lean into what makes them strong instead of trying to mitigate some of these weaknesses we talked about.
100%.
Because not taking the overpriced units is going to leave you in a spot where you just really aren't doing that much, because the price to move units are not that well priced to move, unfortunately. So what is the ways we're going to do this? Well, first, we're going to start with number 1, Eldar. What are we doing against Eldar? We're going to get into a deep striking trash war, because you know what Eldar doesn't want to see with all those one-shot Bright Lances? 100 bodies. They do not want to deal with that when they've also got to deal with, hey, suddenly there's this greater demon right in front of them. They need the Bright Lances to be going there. And that doesn't leave them in a good spot to stop your scoring units, which means you are going to score. Just a brief anecdote on that. Kyle Treya was playing in ATC, and he had a list specifically designed to score points with demons uninteractively.
Specifically 92.
Yes, 92. Every single game. And he would play Eldar and get a 92. And there was almost nothing his opponents could do to stop him. And if they didn't realize that that was going to happen, they just lost by a few points. And this is good players just losing with Eldar, 2 demons by a few points.
Because you make them come out, and we're talking about deep strike trash, make them come do something about the fact that you just cleansed for 5. You just area denied for 5. You did a teleport homer. You did behind enemy lines. You just keep scoring. You have invulns, so they have to almost always have to overcommit, because you might spike invulns. So a good player has to overcommit just a little bit to make sure that you just don't only roll invuln saves. Probably won't happen, but they can't take that chance. So you want to make them overcommit and then make them pay for that. You actually can, over the course of time against an Eldar player, you start picking things up. You grab a fire prism, you kill all of their trash. As soon as their trash is done, all of a sudden they have to put real things out. They really don't want to put a teleport homer. They don't want to do area denial with the Wraith Knights sitting in the middle. So it's big things that you can start getting into that. And it's important that you play for those points and not just try to, again, line up and smash their army. You can also just frustrate them. Their army is more efficiently pointed than your army is. Make it so you play less turns. And when I say less turns, I don't mean stall the game out and go, hey, Sean, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be back in 2 hours. I'm talking about, you can't shoot me if we're not within 18. Cool. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to score my secondaries. I'm going to sit on my 2, especially if I'm playing something like priority targets, purge the foe. I'm going to take my 4. I'm going to take my 10. I'm going to sit there. I'm going to do nothing. I'm just going to keep the game shortened. You know why? Because I can't do great efficient trades, but what I can do is get him into a game of we only are playing a 2.5 turn game because all I've done is trade some trash in the beginning, and then we start playing the game. And especially with you're playing an army, you're playing GSC, you're playing an Eldar, you're playing one of those armies that thinks that they're going to beat you. They are super worried when they don't do damage to you early on, when you're not giving them targets. It's a big deal to look for that. If we could be playing right now, if Sean's playing Eldar, I'm playing Demons, a lot of times Sean's going to be, oh crap, why is the game tied right now? Aren't I supposed to be smashing this Demons? They will start making non-optimum moves, threats. It's the psychology of the game that goes a very long way. So we talked about the threats. I still have the ability to come down all around. Even after turn 3, I can start picking things up. I can start continuing to threaten everywhere on the board. Everyone can box out for a couple turns. No one can box out for the entire game. It's very, very difficult on that.
That's exactly right. And you talked about the next key point, which is going into Imperial Knights and other towering models. We are going to be unshootable. If you just keep units that are important within 6 inches of Be'lakor, it doesn't matter that they have towering. They can't shoot you. And if you're not on the board and what's on the board can't be shot, it's really hard for Imperial Knights to get that snowball lead that they want. They want those multiple turns of shooting. So that's going to be our plan, is to make ourselves as unshootable as possible against Imperial Knights.
And it's a big deal because you have certain things like they make mistakes. All of a sudden, Shalaxi is soccer tossing a big knight into another dimension. So you're looking for them to make those pushes where all of a sudden you can counter. You have Shadows of the Warp. You're making 6-inch drops. She's advancing and charging. You've got things like, let's talk about GSC, because it's a big deal because they have a tough time hurting the big people, and then you can make them come to you, especially now that GSC has to deploy within 3 inches of their ambush tokens, completely within 3. That's a gigantic thing. It's a huge benefit for you playing Demons because you can push them back and they have to start putting their ambush tokens much, much farther back. And the thing is that weirdly enough, you can outscore that unit or that army with the Demons because you can start dominating the middle of the board for multiple turns. And even though you can lose that war of attrition, you'll win the war of just scoring points.
That's exactly right. And I just noticed we put a brief typo on there. It should be T7 plus, because what you're trying to do is not have your greater demons necessarily live through a full GSE round of shooting, but to require them to shoot multiple units at one big demon, which means all your little scoring pieces and all your other big threats are going to be able to just pick up those GSE units on the following turn. And things like, as we'll get into, and you can see kind of in the list of key units here, Keeper of Secrets. -1 to hit all the time is a very good thing to have against GSE.
One of my favorites is just, and everybody's going to know this, I just love my trash. It's Nurglings, Flamers basically being able to pick up the trash too. Tons of shots. Nurglings, man, they are fantastic against Custodes. What do they do against Custodes? Absolutely 0 wounds, nothing at all. What they do is stop the rapid ingresses from happening, push them back, make them charge things that they have no want to charge. Also, it's a big deal if I can stop those Custos from getting to the objectives. They don't then get their fight first. They don't get full rerolls because they're standing off of an objective. I'm totally willing to just wrap things with Nurglings, get them in the way. Move blocking a lot of times is way better than killing something. It just puts them in a terrible situation where they're wasting turns doing nothing.
That's exactly right, and that is going to be our plan against Custodes, is to keep them off those objectives, whittle them away with what little shooting we have, which is shorter ranged, but when they can't move through your Nurglings, they're not going to be able to charge us. So that's part of what makes our plan against Custodes so good, is we can keep them off of those objectives before they can actually get there.
Let's talk about practice with these things. So I want to go over being time efficient. So I can't stress enough playing it. A lot of people just like to play full games. That's fine. But to be as efficient as you can, you have to reset. You have to talk to your opponent. You have to talk to your playtest partner. If I'm playing games with Sean right now, we're going to be playing 4, 5, 6 games in the span of one game because I'm going to ask, is this the most optimum play for Bellicor? Can I put more stuff in reserve? Should I put more stuff on the table? You know what I mean? How am I going to score this? And look at the board every single turn and go, is this the most optimum thing I could do? And it's going to change per the mission. It's such a big deal to go, this isn't just the plan that I do against Custodes. It's the plan I do against Custodes on Hammer and Anvil. It's the plan I do on Dawn of War. Because those are going to change a lot. Because the game plan changes. The other person's plan is going to change a lot too, depending on that. So we have to figure out what's the most optimal thing to do in that moment. And I can't tell you how much it's so valuable. Ask your opponent. Ask who you're playing with. It's not your opponent at the time. Where tournaments, you have an opponent, and when you're playing at the game store, the basement, the whatever, you have somebody that's helping you be the best demon player that you can possibly be. So you need to be asking back and forth. If I do this, this is what would be the most annoying move I could possibly do right now on the table for you? What are you trying to do? That's one of the biggest things when you're practicing with someone. Make sure that you're asking, what are you trying to, like, how are you trying to score points in the next turn? Okay, well, what would be the best way for me to counter that? Because as a demon player, you have a crap ton of options and you're giving a crap ton of threats. So it is really important to walk kind of through your pros, cons, put out that Excel spreadsheet and figure it out. But like, you have to figure out what is the most valuable move I can make at any given time.
That's exactly right. And part of that is you hit on it entirely. You need to have good communication with whoever you're practicing with. And that good communication is going to translate into your tournament games because suddenly you're going to start asking, like you would in a practice game, hey, I intend to do this. And you're going to be playing by intent without even trying. And you're going to see your opponents are going to be much more engaged with you. And you're going to honestly just have better games. You're going to have easier times communicating with your opponent and you're going to play better. And that is what we mean by communicating in practice.
And I do want to be mindful of your plan. This is such a big deal because your goal is not the table with the except for Monster of Ash versus Imperial Knights, but it's important that you go over twice. You have your, again, beginning of game plan and then your middle of game plan to make sure that you're still on point with your plan. I already said it before. I'm going to say it one more time. You have to stay on plan, score your points. Don't just get in scrums. You don't have the most efficient pointed stuff. It means you can't just slam into people and just keep hitting units back and forth.
Right. If you are more of an aggressive player who likes to get at them as fast as possible, that's me. I am that. I have to remind myself when I'm playing demons that, hey, that's not what my army is trying to do. I may have those, desires when I'm playing, and I'm going to see the opportunities to do that. And I need to say, wait, what's my plan? I'm just trying to outscore them. As Kyle traded at ATC, I'm trying to get 92. I don't need to remove their units to do it. I just need to be able to make the space to deep strike in, to score those secondaries, and get out of dodge.
And let's talk about making adjustments on that. Because once you do that, you want to make sure that a lot of times you're looking at the game after you play, you put your practice games out, you have to ask yourself, am I making changes to the list? Am I making changes to how I play? Or am I making adjustments to both? Most of the time, you're going to be doing a little bit of both. Yeah, I could have played this a little bit better, but also, would another unit be more efficient? Do I need more damage? Do I need more trash? Do I need more things that just hold the board? And you're going to get that by testing, by putting it on the board. But it's important that you, again, have an army identity. You have about 1,500 points of your army that does not change. That is the core concept of that army. And then you solve for X, don't solve for X, Y, and Z.
That's exactly right. So you need to decide right away, does Monster Mash sound more appealing to you? Is big demons your jam? Are you going to be able to play this list, enjoy playing it, but also enjoy practicing it and how it practices? Or is just throwing as many small demons at your opponent as possible over and over again how you just like to live life normally? You just want to throw everything at them and score all of your points and make your opponent deal with it. And you need to decide that. And most importantly, while you're deciding first on this, also know that there isn't a correct list. It is the worst possible thing to do when you're playing demons to say, this is the list, I have to play it. Because demons have so much, as Brad said, they have so much player agency that any unit can get just about anywhere on the table you need them to go. So as long as you are making a plan for that unit, then you certainly should run it and you should put it on the table. You should practice it, especially if you if you spend a lot of time painting it. Demons are fantastic models to paint, and you don't want to spend 4 hours painting a greater unclean one just for somebody to say, "Oh, actually, you shouldn't take that." Don't listen to them.
Rule of cool always applies.
Exactly. So, what are some things that demon players might be struggling with? Brad, why don't you hit some of those points for us?
The identity crisis is a big deal. What I was saying before, trying to stat check your opponent is going to work occasionally, but it's not going to get you consistent wins against the top, because the top is there because they probably have 2-point efficient either units, mechanics, or both. So you need to play to your strengths and not to theirs. One of the biggest things is the wear and win is a huge deal for me. I love this, what you said on this. Shalaxi survived, but my army didn't. That means that your opponent pulled you into some place where they wanted you and you didn't want to be. I can't, the amount of times I put up the red herring and I'm like, oh no, you're going to charge this unit that weirdly enough is in Guam and nowhere near any objectives. Oh God, I can't believe you killed it. And now you are doing absolutely nothing. One of my biggest things is, and I love saying this, is before you move anything in your army, ask yourself 3 questions. How is this scoring me points? How is this denying me points? How is this setting me up for the next turn? And if you can't answer that, don't do anything yet with that unit. Because if you're not fighting on objectives, there has to be a reason you're not on an objective. If you look down and you don't see whatever your favorite icon is on your neoprene, you're doing something wrong, or you have to have a real reason to stage that. Maybe you're staging for the next turn, but you have to ask those 3 questions. And if you can't answer them, you're probably in the wrong place. It's a big deal on that. Then I love the, who me? Trying to have a unit do something it's not designed to do. Don't try to bully people with non-bully units. Let your trash do trash things. Some of your trash units can be literal MVPs. If a flavor unit survives throughout the game and does a couple wounds, move blocks, scores me more than 1 secondary, that thing's MVP right now. Score points first. Kill things second. I know that everybody's going to be like, what? But score points. You have to score. It doesn't matter how many, you get no like bonus points for just randomly killing. I guess you do for no prisoners, but I'm saying when you go and you put in your score at BCP, there isn't an extra button that says I killed the shit out of my opponent's army. It just asks you how many points you got and how many points they got. No one cares how big of a beatdown you put there. So
that's exactly right. And one of the things, demon players might not know is, hey, those 6-man flamer units, stop doing that. That is I played demons through a super major. I love my 6-man flamer units, 5-mans, but please stop taking them. They are a scoring unit that is going to move block. They're going to throw a few chip wounds here and there, and they're going to overwatch some trash as it comes out to score for your opponent. They are not designed to go with, say, an Exalted Flamer and just drop down and put the hurt on somebody. You're going to be so underwhelmed by doing that. As somebody who tried that, I tried that so many times. You are going to be so underwhelmed each time.
100%. Let's go with the wrap up for deal with it, then look at the sample list. So we've got our preparation. You know how your army scores, combos, and again, I can't stress enough, everybody doesn't look at this enough. Figure out how your tournament is ruling certain things like Bellicose or Realm of Chaos stratagem, and also know what terrain they're using, towering rules, what they're doing with that. Identify your strengths and weaknesses. Through your play testing, you should know basically what you're looking at. You should have target priority is a huge deal in that, and that's something that you're going to get from practicing. Because a lot of times people, and I'm going to give you the Brad long-winded answer as usual, because I have no other ability to answer it. If Sean's playing his Eldar right now, and he's got a Wraith Knight, and my options are picking up Shadow Specters, Warp Spiders, Random Tank, and a Hornet, or killing the Wraith Knight, I'm killing all that trash, because I'm going to score more points. And the problem is that if I do all those things and kill that Wraith Knight, I also, a lot of times, don't have a guarantee that I'm going to kill that Wraith Knight. I guarantee that I'm going to kill all that nonsense, and it's going to score me a ton of points. It's also going to make my opponent have very little ability to score points. So you have to look at what is the gain I get from killing the big thing, from killing the big knight, from killing the Wraith Knight, from killing whatever their big thing is. Could I be better off just move blocking this thing? Maybe grabbing it with some trash? Look at that. When you're looking at strength and weaknesses, you have to do target priority. And that's a big thing. I'm sorry. I took forever on that one, but that's what I do.
There you go. Finally, we got, we're going to make a plan. We know that our plan revolves around scoring. We are not going to just go running, screaming at them. We're going to leave that for the World Eaters. We're demons. We're conniving. We're going to make this plan, and we're going to stick to it. And most importantly, we know we're going to take our scoring units in scoring unit sizes, and we're not going to try to take 6-man flamer units or what have you. We're going to stick to exactly what we know that they can do, and we're going to do it.
And then practice and making adjustments just goes hand in hand, because you're going to continually make small adjustments. Again, don't be afraid to use your favorite unit, the thing that you like, your best painted unit, in your adjustments. Don't just run whatever the top list is. You won't be familiar with it. You won't love it. You won't play it enough. Play your favorite units. Play the things that are your crutch units, the things that you need. Do you need a little bit more speed? If you're like me, maybe you need more trash than everybody else combined. But there's just things that you need. You know what I mean? You need that rock solid. Maybe you need a huge unit of horse. Whatever you need. It's the big deal on that. So let's look at this. We got a sample list for Monster Mash, then we have a sample list for Horde board control. Run me through the Monster Mash list.
All right, so with Monster Mash list, you've got Bellicor. Surprise! I'm not kidding. He's in every list. Just start there. This is not a joke. We got the Bloodthirster. He's there mainly to take down knights and to threaten them and other big models. We've got Fateweaver, who's going to be able to make our opponent's stratagem once per game cost 1 more for the rest of the battle. He's also there for that niche play to sticking objective and on a 2-up on turn 1, get that CP back. We've got the Lord of Change with the Everstave, because if you're looking for one of the most efficient, if efficiency is your big thing, most efficient shooting units in Demons is the Lord of Change with the Everstave. Then we have Shalaxi with all the abilities that she has. She is both going to dish out damage, threaten to hurt your opponent, really make them think about how to deal with her, and she's going to tank a lot. Most of the time, in a Monster Mash list, she is going to be what they try to target, because you are not going to give them an option. You are saying, here's my Shalaxi, you must deal with her. And that is going to give you the time to score all your points that you need to, or to take down maybe that really hard to take down threat. Then we have the Changeling. The Changeling is another fantastic unit who can both drop in to do secondaries as needed, or just stand on another objective. If we're going to sticky our home objective, maybe the Changeling goes over and deep strikes onto a side objective, and we keep the game away from that. And they can't, towering units can't shoot it. It has lone operative. Indirect can't shoot it for the same reason. And it's just going to be very annoying. Then what do we include? We include our Nurglings. You should probably take some Nurglings in a demon list. If you hate them, find another unit that can do their role, but man, are they so good for what you want to be doing. They score points, they move block, they just hang out and are generally very annoying. And finally, we have some pink horrors who are going to be our units that go and score things like go hold 2 objectives in the middle. Well, pink horrors, just running out and tagging an objective to score that, there's probably a good chance that your horrors are going to be left alive at the start of your next turn. So that's why they're there.
Love it. And then we're going to go into my favorite, having all kinds of more crap.
Yeah, so we have the Horde board control list. This is the list where you say, let's see, this is a trash man list, as Brad would say it, but you can also be kinder and say this is a thinking man's list or woman's list. This is going to require you to have pinpoint precision on where you need to hit. So what's in it? We have Be'lakor, of course. We got Lord of Change, again, most efficient shooting option we can take. Then we have the Rendmaster on Bloodthrone with the enhancement Argath, the King of Blades. What does this unit do? This unit is for 170 points, can drop down and really put the pain on one unit. He has the ability to select a unit that he can see within, I believe it's 18 inches, and at the start of the fight phase. And then he increases the strength, AP, and damage of your weapons. Whew, that is a big ability to have on a cheap guy like that. Conveniently, he's also high toughness and relatively high wounds. So he's going to be able to get that precision damage that you need. Then we have 2 lone operatives for the exact same reason I mentioned for Monster Mash. We got the Blue Scribes and the Changeling. Then we have Brad's favorite part. We have all this trash.
12 units of nonsense scores you the game, baby.
Exactly. We got the pinks, we got the Nurglings, we got Blood Crushers, and we got Flamers. And what are you trying to do with these? Score. You're trying to score with them. Or you're going to sit down and ask Brad's 3 questions. How am I scoring with this? How am I stopping my opponent from scoring with it? And finally, Brad, close us out with your favorite.
Hold on. I too much pressure. I don't know what my favorite is on that. I was like...
You're not going to move if you don't need to. You're not going to use it.
100%. I can't tell you enough. If you don't know what you're going to do with a unit, just don't. The best way to not be killed is to not be seen. You don't have to put things out in the open. You don't have to run out if you're not scoring points too. Here's a bit. I'm going to end this. I'm going to end because as usual we ran long in this video because I don't shut up. But don't run out to an objective if it's not scoring you a secondary point and you're not going to keep that objective till the next turn. It just gets units killed. If you run a unit out and I'm standing in front of Sean and it's open territory in the middle and I didn't do a teleport homer, area deny, I wasn't doing a secondary, why am I there? My opponent's just going to kill me and they basically kill me for free. Don't do that, especially with demons. There's no reason to lose units for no reason. So tell people where you are.
Currently, I am at Dice with Rice 40K on YouTube. We're going to be doing one of these every week, and you really need to let us know in the comments what you would like to see. If you have a favorite army that you're just dying to know, how do I deal with this? Let us know. We read the comments. Apparently, some people don't read their comments of the YouTube videos. We read them. We appreciate the feedback. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to both myself and to Death or Glory on the homepage.
Yes, please. And on that note,
please.
See you later, kids.